passed here, and we have a counter here on our screen, and I can see we're counting down to the beginning of the program. And we're glad to see you out there again on Monday at 2 o'clock thereabout. And we're getting ready to welcome you into the 2025 edition of allpointstv.com and the program here, What's Going On, and hope you'll be around for the next year. Hope you've had a good year as we're closing out 2024. And we are all enthusiastic about 2025. Everybody's talking about a countdown. On the eve of the new year, we do a countdown, and 10, 9, 8, and they get ready to shoot the new year in. See a lot of people out there. I don't know if they're shooting the new year in as much as they're shooting the whole year out. But people are getting ready to celebrate the coming of the new year, and people are looking for some great things to happen in 2025. There are a lot of expectations out there right now. You see the enthusiasm. I mean, everybody's out there. This past weekend, they had Mark Levine. I thought it was a very good program that he did. He had the Trump family on there, members of the Trump family. He had on there, of course, Donald Trump started the program out. And then he brought on Donald Trump Jr., and then he brought Eric Trump on there. And I think he saved the best for last because he brought Laura Trump, Eric's wife. And I thought at one point she'd be a candidate for the seat being vacated by Matt Gates. But no, I think that she's not going to go that route after all. She's been a very good candidate for it after running a brilliant campaign this past time. I don't think she's interested in running. I don't think she's really interested in running for a political seat. But if she did, she would definitely be a formidable candidate. But everybody's looking forward to the 2025 year because people thinking that the coming of Donald Trump the second time around, the second coming of Donald Trump is going to benefit the country greatly because he now knows a lot about Washington, where he was it's like a learning curve when he was president 45. Now he's coming in as 47, and he now knows a lot more about how Washington operates. I know I'm looking forward to it because I think that he's going to come in, because I've been watching the team he's been assembling. I think he's coming in with the idea that he's going to have to take on some people in the deep state. And to be honest with you, if he does not take on the deep state, then nothing is going to change in Washington. We've got to have some fundamental changes. I'm waiting to see also, it's going to be interesting to look at the pardons that have to go out. Not because there's going to be a lot of retribution. I don't think that's what Trump is really about. The idea of going after his political enemies. I don't think he's really about that. But we have to understand something. You cannot have the kind of violations of the law that we've had over the course of the last 4 years, and then people just walk away without any kind of accountability. So when one side sees it as retribution, which I don't know what that's based on, because he was president for 4 years, and we didn't see any signs of that. He could certainly have gone after Hillary Clinton with those dossiers that they were putting out there that were combative and really were illegal in terms of them targeting people of his administration. In fact, they have this former director of the FBI. They have him on tape saying that during the transition period, they knew that there'd be a lot of discombobulation and a lot of disheveled things taking place. And so he says, cavalier, like he says, they sent some people down there and to see what was going on. They really were going down there to see what they could do to put a monkey wrench in the operation, and they're doing that right now. So at some point, you got to take these people on. You can't. We just can't do the walk away. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out, and that's going to be a large part of how successful he'll be during his second term, because these people plan to stop Donald Trump. Somebody put on my Facebook screen a video that was Tucker Carlson interviewing this professor at Princeton University. I think he's a leading professor on the affairs of Eastern Europe. Although he isn't, his field is he's really an economist, but he has a tremendously profound understanding of the politics that's going on in the Middle East. I listen to him all the time because I think he's one of those top-notch scholars that really know something. A lot of people.
Are you talking about Jeffrey Sachs?
Jeffrey Sachs.
Yeah, I'm watching him like this guy. He's good. He's really
good.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with what he's saying because he makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, that's not partisan, but I mean, I just think he's making sense.
He knows what he's talking about, and I have a lot of respect for him because he's very incisive, having studied that area of history. I don't know of anyone else that I would put up there on that level where he is. There's no scholar, none that I've come across. And I kind of go through the mix of scholars out there that's making certain comments on the public square. I have not found anybody out there talking on the level that he's talking about. I have a lot of respect for Victor Davis Hanson as a scholar, but his scholarship is not in that area. And I don't get the impression that he is as, I want to say scholarly. I mean, these are scholars, but I don't think anybody's out there on the level of Jeffrey Sachs at Princeton, and then this other scholar that's over there at the University of Chicago, John Mearsheimer. These people are at the top of their game. And somebody put on my Facebook screen, because people send me things they want me to watch, and I was watching the interview that he did with Carson. That's a 3-hour interview, and Carson was asking him to help him understand what they're now doing in Eastern Europe, and he just has tremendous insight, and you have to give him a lot of credit for the amount of material. This takes a lot of, when you're a scholar, it takes a lot of time for you to stay up on the area in which you are an expert in, if you can call them experts. I don't like that word necessarily, but in order to be up in those areas, you have to stay abreast because things are changing all the time.
Another thing is it's hard to do as a scholar because everybody's got a bias. And when you are advocating somebody or something to remain you have to have like a kind of a loose attachment to that, because what you're advocating might be definitely going the wrong direction, and also having the intellectual honesty to admit when your people that you were backing originally have screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awfully hard for people. So I've seen people do that, but there is a lot of intellectual honesty going on with some of these commentators.
Yeah, I think that the ones that really work for the thing are the ones that will come up and out in the public and admit some errors they made, and we'll feel comfortable enough in the scholarship to say that this part was I've done some additional study of that, and I now look at it through another lens because I learned X, Y, and Z, and you change your mind. That's what an honest scholar will do. But I do listen to Jeffrey Sachs, and I think Jeffrey Sachs is number one scholar that's out there. If anybody knows anyone that knows that is more on top of the game about what's happening in the eastern part of Europe, and have a scholarly merit in that area, I like to hear who that person is. I like to go and listen to those persons. I don't see anyone out there on that level, but I'm not saying they're not out there. And John Mearsheimer of the University of Chicago, that's another scholar that You have to give him a lot of credit. I don't know of a lot of person that come behind him and say anything that would be a correction of his expertise. Although we all have blind spots, you, you have to credit what where they are. Sachs was on. I saw him. I saw him through a video that was sent to me, and I already knew about his expertise. But this interview that he did with Tucker Carlson this past weekend was really quite fascinating. You got to sit there for 3 hours. You better have a notepad because they're saying some things that you won't hear in the standard media. I don't think I've ever seen Jeffrey Sachs on. Have I seen him on any of the? The only show I've seen him on was Piers Morgan. I don't think Piers Morgan go have him back either because they didn't go too well. Piers Morgan, because Morgan is good now in his interview style, but he just set him down. I mean, you just not on that. You have to be careful in that minefield you're walking into because you're not going to go in there and doing the teaching. You got to go in there with some questions. But I think the person that sent me that tape, send me other tapes on Jeffrey Sachs. I can't watch everything, but if you send it to me, I know I'm going to watch it because I have a lot of respect for what he's talking about. We had the death of the 39th president this weekend. Yesterday, James Carter, I know you know him as Jimmy Carter, the 39th president died yesterday at the age of 100, born in 1924 and died yesterday. And they want to tell us who we should mourn and who we should honor in that. And so now we're saying, like for example, Biden is setting aside January the 9th of 2025 as a day of mourning of Jimmy Carter. Now, I'm not listening to that too much because I know how these politicians are. If that had been Donald Trump, not that it lessens anything about Carter, although I don't think Carter deserves any of national mourning, because Carter was not that kind of a president. And really, in my view, and I'm ready to be corrected by any of the scholars out there that think they have another view that trumps this view here, I don't think we've had anything but mediocre presidents beyond George Washington. And this idea that we ought to set aside a day of mourning for James Carter, I think they're just part of them trying to point the American people into a political direction, that these persons have significance in the party of Joe Biden. I don't know if Joe Biden would be so much on mourning. Have you seen him mourning the passing of any Republican presidents? I'm not making this partisan. I'm just simply saying that what they're doing is, they're very partisan in terms of telling us who we ought to appreciate. Carter was a mediocre president, one of the most mediocre presidents we've had.
And you didn't hear when Reagan died. You didn't hear when
nobody wanted to mourn Reagan.
No, they didn't want to. I mean, they had the state funeral for him basically. But
did they tell us they're going to have a day of national mourning? They have set aside the 9th of January to mourn what was before. This is another point. All these presidents we've had during the time in which they, in fact, were in the office were the worst presidents of their at that time until somebody came behind them that then took on the mantle of being the worst president the country has had. I mean, Carter was the worst president we had before Obama. And now that Biden is in there, Biden trumps both of them. He's worse than Obama. And now he's the worst president we've had. So are we going to have a day of mourning? He's in his 80s. I'm not wishing any bad luck on him, but are we going to be mourning this? The fact of the matter is that when it came down to Carter, go back and look at the history that was of Carter. Carter came in. I can't think of who was the last one-term president we had in this country before Carter. But I do know that when they voted Carter out in 1980 and voted Reagan in, they went from the peanut farmer to the actor. Of course, he was the governor of Georgia, and then Reagan was the governor of California, which has since lost his mind, by the way.
And back in the era where millionaires were like, the first, we didn't have that many billionaires. Okay, Carter was a rich man. Okay, he was worth an estimated of. My mom always made this point. He was worth around $6 and $7 million.
Mm-hmm.
So he was not a poor person. I mean, his family had considerable wealth especially at the Georgia at that time. And we're talking pre-internet, cyber world and all that stuff, where you had all these bubble, .com people created. Yeah, he had quite a bit of money.
Yeah, he was peanut farmer, very successful in that, and this a family type of business passed down, and over time you have generational wealth. I don't think that we're talking here about an iconic figure, and a lot of these persons you have to judge them by the time in which I'm talking about the presidents now who came on the scene and what they did, given the times in which they served in that office. And Carter came in the aftermath of Watergate, and all of the things that were happening and swirling around the country around the removal, and it was a removal of Richard Nixon by the CIA. You can claim what you want to. I'm talking about the documentation and what the documentation shows. Many books have been written about this now. And I think the chief of which is the book written by Russ Baker. Somebody should read that book. This was a coup d'etat, the toppling of Richard Nixon, a continuation of the toppling of these presidents. And what was in this case with Nixon was a bloodless coup, but before Nixon, the person he ran against in 1960, that was a blood-filled coup. And the bloodletting was not just with the death of the president, but so many persons that died in the aftermath of it that witnessed the assassination and had a different view of what happened in Dealey Plaza that day. And they were being offed also, including Dorothy Kilgallen, who was very famous for being on What's My Line. But this was a very serious journalist who was writing about some other aspects of what happened there. And she, of course, among a number of other persons, mysteriously died. You'd be surprised. I am looking so forward when Donald Trump gets in there in 2025 and holding him to account for what he said he's going to do. I'm looking forward to that file being released to the public because it has not been set up behind closed walls, behind the walls of the government for going on 61 years. As of let's see, it was 61 years as November. I don't think they had those files locked up for 61 years. That's almost a century because of them telling us what really went on in Dealey Plaza. If that is what happened, and all the ones that were around during that time period have deceased and you're still locking up the files. I don't believe those files will indicate what they've been telling us. That would make no sense. If we have the story as it really played out, then those files should never have been classified in the first place because the story is already out. So I'm looking forward to that. But I will tell you that we had the death of a president, but we've also had the death of the president that's been taking place as well in this country. And I see it on multiple fronts because I see the death of the presidency not only in terms of these presidents being taken out by the this what I call the secret government we have. You can call it the deep state, but it's really a secret government we have operating in this country. And we know that by the way the intelligence community has been operating, because you have to go back and look at what happened in Dealey Plaza. I don't think anybody knows this case better than I know it, and I've been looking at it, and I continue to look at it. And I don't think these experts on that that have been writing about it, I don't think that they should dismiss what James Files is saying too quickly. James Files was he wasn't a part of the mafia, but he was very much, he was like the driver for Nicoletti, Charles Nicoletti. He knew General Rosselli, Sam Giancana, who see, once the government was saying they're going to bring this person in to talk to them, they were just setting them up to be killed. Because once they said they're going to go up there and testify, they ended up being offed, and a lot of it was to close their mouth, because there's no doubt about the fact there was an alliance between the CIA and the mafia. And you read the book by Charles Ashman about that, called the Mafia CIA Link. Go read these. You have to really do some digging here. And when I can, the person I can listen to are the ones I know have done their homework. Also, Mark Levine, I tell you this: I respect the program you did this past weekend, because you brought the guests on there, and the ones you brought on the Trump family. You didn't do a monologue at the beginning of it. You got right into the program, and you started off with the interview of Donald Trump, and then you went through the rest of the family, some of the family members, and you allowed them to come on the program to give their spin on what had happened during the time that Trump was running for re-election. And they were all talking about how they went through the ringer, because they did not want this man in there. And you're saying, what we're saying is, see, we can talk about Carter dying, but let's look at the death of the presidency that's going on. Look at how they are distorting the way the presidential office is in fact carried out, and the authority of that office is being carried out. And so it's more than just we should be looking at, look, I'm not saying dismiss the death of Jimmy Carter. I'm not going to be celebrating it and mourning it on the 9th of January, because I don't let a person tell me who I should in fact honor as a person of significance. I have my own list of people that are significant, and I don't see very many of them out there in the political arena that I think are significant. They've not moved the needle and made this country better. You can't, and you certainly can't claim that for Carter. Carter didn't make this country better; he made it worse. How many presidents have we had that they took the mantle once it had been dropped by the other president, whether he went out of office through violence or otherwise? How many of them went out and then were followed by those who came behind them and then made things better, particularly when the nation's been tattered and torn? I don't see too many of them having done that. Did the country get better when Adams took over from George Washington? Was Adams a transformative president? I mean, can I say that he took the medal that when Washington left office voluntarily after 2 terms? Can I say with a straight face the country got better under Adams? When Adam when Washington died, Light Horse Harry Lee, Robert E. Lee's father, said about George Washington in his eulogy of Washington. He said he was the first in war, the first in peace, and the first in the heart of his countrymen. And that's what he was. That's a tall order to follow, but Adams wasn't up to it. And the country was worse off because of that, because he had some footsteps to walk into, but he wasn't the person to walk up into those shoes. There are a lot of presidents like that, a lot of presidents who had been called by history to a point of greatness, and they were not up to the task. Obama was called to a point of greatness and wasn't up to the task. History had called him to an assignment that he wasn't ready for. He was just not the person to it. I don't, and some are saying Colin Powell would have been, if he had been called to do the job, he would have been better able to do it. I'm not sure that's true either. Because I know a lot more about that part of history than what's on the table. And to be honest with you, they had chosen Barack Obama to be president when he was a student at Harvard University. That choice had already been made. I looked at the documents. That decision had already been made. And when they stood up in 2004, that just solidified the turn, put Barack Obama in front of the American people. He's up there saying he doesn't believe in blue states and red states. The heck if he didn't. He just believed in the United States. And it sounded good soundbite. He didn't believe none of that stuff. And they used that as a battering ram to push him through the network. He had all the other baggage he was carrying. He had his affiliation for 20 years in Jeremiah Wright's church. He had that from the American people, and then pushed that campaign as if this man was not listening to this Jeremiah Wright and carrying that Jeremiah Wright baggage in his mind, and in the brokenness of his own identity. And they pushed him up there to be president. This is all contrived, and the public was ready for a change in the city. The country is always ready for a change, and they've been everywhere looking for it. Changing the presidents, he changed George Bush Sr. saying, telling us this change we could believe in with him, telling us it was 1,000 points of light. You know how they come in and they claim that they're going to bring something in that's different. But when he told us to read his lips, and we read his lips and saw he was lying, the worst thing a president can say is read. The worst thing a president can say is read my lips. And we read their lips. The lips are moving. We read them. That's not a good thing to do. Don't tell us to read your lips, because we know what we're listening to. We know what you're saying, and we know what you said in your campaign, and you're not doing that. But he said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." And when he raised the taxes, when the taxes were raised, you see what happened. He was a one-term president.
By the way, though, didn't he have a House and Senate that was controlled by the Democrats at that point?
Had a what now?
Then Bush first had so what they did, they saw that. I remember them in the news. They were talking about, oh, we're gonna. They basically worked the conditions so they could have to push that, and he had to sign it. It was like, I mean, I don't like Bush one or two. I couldn't stand him. Okay, these. I mean, Bush one was the director of the CIA. This any psycho organization like that. I don't want anybody. But I got to be honest. The Democrats, they had the majority at that point in the House and Senate.
They did.
So they kind of then they said, "Oh, see, he broke a promise." Well, they forced it on him. Basically,
Yeah,
they basically faced the situation on him. You know,
John, when I saw that happening, I thought immediately about when I first saw this merger of two different power state power sources in history, where they merged, where the one that was in the invisible part of the control came out into the front and took over the control directly. And the first time I saw that was in Egypt with now what dynasty was this? This was during the dynasty during the uh, 18th 18th dynasty with Ay, and he was one of the priests, and they were formidable at that time and were working behind the scenes and things of that sort. But then but I became he was a chief priest, but became the pharaoh at some point. And you had Bush Senior, who was the director of the CIA, and then the man is now president of the United States. And it's amazing that you could do that in this country, and nobody raises an eyebrow about what that is about. But the CIA was merged in the presidency, and that's why I say I title this. Yeah, we're looking at the death of a president, but we're not looking at the death of the presidency that's going on, as the president is being really the president is being erased in terms of the authority the president's supposed to have. I see it even in the we've been talking the last couple of weeks about the appointment clause in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution. I think the scholars need to read that more carefully than they have. They're not talking about this, but that clause needs to be looked at to see what that clause recommends, and really as is more than a recommendation, that clause requires, and see if it requires these persons that's been nominated to go up to the Hill and plead for confirmation. They're making the plea. They're going up there on the Hill to plead for confirmation by the senators. See where that is in the document. It is so profane what they're doing in this country that it's almost you really. Sometimes I just sit there and just shake my head. I'm just so stunned by how we have no respect for what's called for in the Constitution, and understand why it's called for. When the Constitution says that, and this is in the appointment part of the presidency, when it says that the president shall nominate, and let's say we're talking here in this case about should nominate members of his cabinet. Now, if you look at the language very carefully, and I don't think the scholars understand this, I don't see them talking about it, and I don't think they understand what that language is saying. I don't see any evidence of it. We are saying the death of the president of the United States. in this mistranslation of the role the president should be playing in American society. We're seeing the death of the presidency because there's nothing in the Constitution where you bypass the president and have the person being nominated by the president, where the nominees go up there and plead their case. What happened to the president's role? In Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2, what happened to the president's role that's in the document? There's nothing in the document for the nominees to go up there and plead their cause. That's the president's role. And if they're begging the members of the Senate, I mean, Matt Gaetz stepped down because he was assured that Mamie Collins and this senator over there in Alaska, who's a Democrat in the Republican Party, another Democrat in the Republican Party. Most of them are Democrats in the Republican Party. These persons are Republicans in name only. But look at Lisa Murkowski over there in Alaska, the same thing over there. And once he went to talk to them, and they were assured him that they're not going to vote for him, these people are stepping down when they shouldn't have gone up there in the first place. Where's the call for them to go up there and try to cajole members of the Senate to confirm them in the nomination? Where's that? That's a dismissal of the presidency. You scholars, you agree with that? Do you agree with that? They shouldn't be going up there saying anything. They've been nominated by the President of the United States. Here's what the language says. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, like that's going to happen. I want to read this to you. And you tell me what they're doing, what the nominees are doing up there in that hill talking to senators. Where's the call for that in this document? We got a Constitution, right? Okay, here's the Constitution. You tell me what this language here have them go up on that hill talking to these senators individually. This is Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. See if you hear anything in this language for the nominees who don't even have an institutional office going there talking to the senators about being confirmed in a nomination of the president. I got to tell you something. I'm sick of these politicians. I know you don't know that these violations are occurring. I'm telling you, these are violations. Do you scholars agree with them going up on that hill and pleading individually to be confirmed by the Senate? Talking to individual senators about that? Where is it found here in the document? Here's what it says in the document. See if you can find what they're doing anywhere in this language here. He shall have power. He should have power by and with the consent of the Senate. This is part here. Provided that 2/3, now they're talking about the treaties in this case right here. He shall have the power to make treaties by and with the consent of the senators. Listen to this part here. Provided that 2/3 of the senators will concur. And provided that is very powerful language in that part of the document. But it is absent from the rest of the document, that part, where it gets to the appointment process. Now you got to understand this language here. And do you scholars agree with me on this point? There's no provided that in the rest of the language. It says that after saying he shall have the power to make treaties, provided that, you see, there's something additional from the do. But so if you say he shall have the power to make treaties, isn't that power already there to make treaties? But provided that 2/3 agree with it, but the power to do so is there, but it does. But you have to have 2/3 agreement for the treaty to be commenced because they're giving something additional that must happen. But that provided that is absent from the rest of the language. Have you scholars considered that? See, we're going to be talking about Carter having died on the 9th of January. Is anyone going to be talking about on that day or prior to that day or thereafter of that date that we're saying is a death of the presidency of the United States of America? Because there should be no conversation going on with the nominees. All the scholars agree that the nomination should be unencumbered because there's no parameter put around the nomination. So they would all agree that the nomination should be unencumbered. He has the right to nominate. Where their problem is that when it comes down to the confirmation of the nominee, and so they would agree the nomination should be unencumbered. It's plenary, the plenary power, meaning that the power is absolute. The president can nominate unencumbered. But why is that part in there? It doesn't say provided that. It says in with the consent, with the advice and the consent of the Senate. Why is that in there without saying provided that? It doesn't say provided that a majority agree. It says with the consent and advice of the Senate. No provided that in that part of the language. They put provided that in the treaty, provided that the 2/3 of the Senate will agree with the treaty that's being ratified by the president, provided that 2/3 would agree with the president on that. But this advise and consent clause in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2, is for what reason does it not say provided that there? I'm asking you scholars that question. Because what they're doing in this case here, in that part of that section of the Constitution, they're locating where the power comes from. In consent and advice and the consent. That's the conversation that goes on with the president, but it goes on prior to, in the aftermath of the nomination. Now the president will invite them into a conversation about the appointee. That's the president having to talk to them about that. And they have to tell the president that they're not going to let him do that. They have no role in it. This is between the president, this is between the two of the three departments of the federal government talking to each other. The president seeks their input, their advice, and so on and so forth. And why does the president seek the advice of the Senate? Let me tell you why. Up until 1913, the Senate was peopled by the representatives of the state. And before the president can act on anything, the president must get the permission of the Constitution. In this language here, it says he may require of his department in writing things that's specific to the departments that they're over. But if you think that it says here they can veto that, show it to me here. With the advice and the consent. It's advisory and consent to the selection, because the power comes from the states given to the president. And it's a reminder in the document of where his power comes from. He's not just out there troubleshooting on his own. He's actually working from power invested in the office of the presidency. And I'm telling you, scholars, this. It's obscene to have the president making a nomination and then having him go on the hill begging for confirmation. That is obscene. And it's not recognized as being obscene by the scholars because they don't understand the Constitution. I'm here to tell them to their face they don't understand it. That is so obscene to have them doing that. So while we are celebrating the death, while they're celebrating, I'm not celebrating. I'm not wishing anybody deceased. But on the 9th of January, I'm not celebrating Carter. Carter's presidency was inconsequential in this country. It came at a point in history where it would have been formidable if he had done the job that was entrusted to him by history, because this man had an assignment to do. And this man was play acting in that job. You know, the idea that he comes in, Carter comes in, and he's going to be a different kind of president. They had him camera on him carrying his bag up the steps of Air Force One. He's going to carry his own bags. Did anybody notice when that door closed? Carter told him, gave him those bags and told him, get these bags and put them where they belong. Oh, that was for the camera. But people thought, there's something new here. This peanut farmer coming from the outside, and he's going to go in there and change the landscape. Yeah.
If they try to push him right now with the cancel culture and stuff like that, and they got the fact that he let's face it, his church didn't get desegregated until after becoming the public limelight. All right. He had gone to a segregated church his entire existence for the most part.
Yeah.
And
Carter's a fraud.
yeah, he was like foisted upon him. Another thing is too, he didn't have I always thought his smile was strained. You could see the neck muscles straining every time he smiled.
This man was a fraud. He threw his hat in the ring when there was a lot of discombobulation in the Republican Party. We had a split between the split in the Republican Party. Go read Carl Oglesby's book. It's not a scholarly written book, but it is a very good book to read for the information it contains. It's called The Yankee Cowboy War. And if you go and read it, you'll see here what Oglesby is making a claim of is that this was a fratricidal kind of war going on between the Eastern Bloc and the Western Bloc. He calls the Easterners the Yankees. That's where New York Yankees are, right? So it's about the New England group. There's a power center there. There's also one over here with the industrialists over in the Southwest, the California group. If you go back and look at this very carefully, and you got your eyes open now to watch it, you'll see they had a coup d'etat against Richard Nixon. When Nixon ran in 1972, Richard Nixon carried every state except Massachusetts, got every electoral vote except 20 electoral votes. Let me make sure I'm right here. There were 538 electoral votes, and Nixon got 520 of those electoral votes. He didn't carry Massachusetts. There was 14 electoral votes. He didn't carry, as a Republican, he certainly didn't carry Washington, D.C. That's 3 electoral votes. And there was one faithless electoral voter, that did not vote along with the state, and that person voted for a different candidate. So there were 520 electoral votes.
Okay, you're talking about the race between McGovern and Nixon in '72.
72. Go look.
I just did. Okay.
I'm right.
Yeah, you're right. It's like he got 520 electoral votes,
Right.
and he probably got like 52% of the popular vote. I think it was. Yeah.
Look.
Yeah.
Dude, how many percent? This is a coup d'etat.
No, actually, he got 60%. He actually got popular vote. He got way more than 52%.
Yeah, look, that was a spread between him and McGovern of 17 million votes. John, that was the largest spread between two opponents running for the presidency in American history.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, he got percentage of 60.7% of the vote, and McGovern got 37.5%.
That's what I was saying,
yeah.
John.
I just try. I just want to make sure we got the information right. You had it right. We just wanted to confirm.
Yeah,
nobody can come up behind.
Always check behind me, because I'm gonna tell you something. Okay, I'm not gonna tell you that. That's just obvious. I don't have to tell you that. I'm just telling you that. Yeah, that was a 17 million vote spread between McGovern and Nixon. You tell me how is a man who got 17 million more votes. Trump got 5 million more votes than Harris this time. They can't say he took that away from them. They're going to say, well, he didn't win the popular vote. Well, I figured out what was going on finally, what Trump was doing. Trump was going into the Democratic strongholds and casting a net out there, a reel out there, casting for votes. Not that he could win the states that he was in. I mean, it's a done deal in California. He went out there anyway. It's a done deal in New York. He went out there anyway. And some of the other states. And by the way, carried all of the purple states that could have gone either way, all 7 of them. He got every last one of them. But he won the popular vote this time, when he could take that out of their excuse for not falling behind him. He wanted to make this not about Donald Trump. He wanted to make it about what he really was doing, was making this not about him, but making it about the presidency of the United States. Where you fall in line behind the American people have made their choice of who their presidential leader will be, and when you fall in line and support that as a patriot in the country, that will in fact go along with the majority vote you claim you believe in majority rule. Okay, we got a majority in the electoral vote. We got a majority in the popular vote. Okay, those are 2 majorities. They claim that he had one in 2016, didn't have the other. Okay, he has both this time. Did they fall in line? No, because it's not about Donald Trump. It's about the presidency. They don't want to recognize the presidency unless it behooves them to be in recognition of what the president's in fact doing. They don't even want to be in lockstep with the Supreme Court. Unless the Supreme Court, they're trying to pack the Supreme Court. Unless it is in line with what they think the court ought to be doing. We have an institutional attack going on in this country.
Well, I guess FDR, it's a long tradition of Democrats, because every time they don't get what they want, they start. It's okay. Democracy means actually have the votes amongst the public. It doesn't mean creating more bureaucrats to go along with the other bureaucrats.
John, that's the history of that. You saw it. We all know about it in terms of the Democratic Party standing up as the secession party, but they did that again in 1948. Go back and look at the election in 1948 when Sparkman uh, 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 down there in Alabama was running, and the South, the Dixiecrat Party split with Truman. They split because they were carrying the banner, civil rights banner, and they objected to that, and so the Dixiecrats were going to splinter from the Democratic Party and set up another secession movement. You ought to go read this book called Simple Justice. I suggest you read that book and read about how the Brown ruling. Everybody talks about the Brown ruling. Go read this book and read about how they came up with the Brown ruling, because that was decided before they got to the court. This is not about Thurgood Marshall having set anybody down in his argumentation. This is about them having already decided how that court case is going to be decided. They did that on the golf course. And when Vincent died, who was the Chief Justice at that time, he died in '53. That's what prompted Felix Frankfurt to say, until Vincent died, he didn't believe there was a God. But when Vincent died, he said he believed in God all of a sudden, because Vincent was a thorn in the side. That court case is not going to be unanimous if Vincent had lived, because Vincent would have carried some of the more wayward members of the court along with him. It could have probably been a 5-4 ruling. And in the 5-4, they would have had a war going on in this country at that point, because the South was not going to listen to 5-4. And when Vincent died, they solidified the rest of it behind closed doors, and they had a unanimous verdict. But that's how the verdict was arrived at. You can go and read the document, Simple Justice, for the documentation of that. That was decided politically by the court. They knew that a split verdict. What we have in this country is a all-out attack upon the institutions of this country. People are not going to follow it unless they agree with it. This attack, they're coming back trying to change the. They want to change the electoral college vote. They want to have a simple majority to decide the election of the president. We better be concerned about that, because the one thing that you could, in reading the Federalist Papers, one thing that's very clear is the fear that the framers had of a democratic vote, because they're just majority more on this side than on that side, with this side having a larger number, that side having a smaller number, unrestrained because of its numbers. You think that's what they intended in that convention? That the majority voice can be the voice that rules the roost, that carries that day, that it carries because he had more on this side than the other side. Where's the standard there? Where is there a constitutional standard? Where's that even the intention based upon the word democracy mentioned in the documents? It's not found anywhere in the documents, because they didn't want democracy, because they understood the danger of it. You can the best place to read that in the Federalist Papers is Federalist Paper 9 and 10. 9 by Hamilton, and then that conversation in 9 is picked up in 10 by Madison. They both were in agreement on this point here. Now, I can tell you, nobody else is going to say this, but there's some things in the Federalist Papers they got wrong too. And I had to figure out, how could they make the mistake inside of the convention, and the contradiction of some things in that convention in the practice that occurred within a 10-year period of time of the ratification of that document. I couldn't understand that when I was in grad school, and nobody could answer my question about that. But I did figure it out. I couldn't understand how William Blunt allowed, for example, himself to go through the impeachment process. And how is he sitting in a convention and allowing that? What explains that this man was there and he went along with them throwing him out by impeachment and by an impeachment? He can't impeach a member of the Senate. He said it there where that decision was made, and that goes on, and he doesn't contest that. Well, I had to figure out how can that happen. And I read Brothers Paper 45 and 64, 74, and 75. And I'm reading this contradictory language there. And Hamilton stayed the whole course. He didn't leave like the other two that came from New York. He didn't leave. So some of the things he's writing there are contradicted by what really went on, based on what Yates writes, based upon what Madison wrote, and also based upon what was concluded in the final writing of the document. Because when I looked at those committees looking for the answer of how that happened, some of these contradictions happened, I saw it when I began to look at the committees, and one of the committees was that had 23 members on it. And that needs to be understood too. I won't go into that because that's too far for what I'm trying to do here today. But the committee that had 23 members was an organizing committee that began to take in and organize all things that happened in that convention and so on. That was their job. So there was a barrage of things that happened, but not all of the members were in on all the discussions. That's what really I didn't get till later. I didn't even get that in grad school. I had to figure that out on my own. But I kept asking the question when I was in grad school, how could those contradictions have prevailed when they were there? But when I looked at the committee of 11, they met 3 times on very important issues. One of which was the senators and how they would be configured into the power scheme that you saw until 1913 with the passage of the 17th Amendment, which was a egregious mistake made by them repealing the way we choose senators and unhinging them from the states as they've done now. That's a very big mistake that they made. They're just out there, the senators just out there floating right now, but they got the same power as if they're still hinged, as if they're still hooked up with the states. They're still out there as if they have the power in their office that is backed up by the state, and that's not true anymore as of 1913. Once you change the way in which you elect the senators, that part is nullified for what it was intended to do, because the senators are supposed to be the mouthpieces of the states. You got to roll it up, okay? We had to. All I'm saying here today is this: we have an attack. You can celebrate Carter on the 9th of January. I'm not going to celebrate Carter. I think Carter was a disaster for this country. But I'm going to tell you this: we got bigger fish to fry. Our institutions in this country, our institutions are under attack in this country, and it's very subtle. But the attack is even in terms of these persons going on that hill, going up there to plead their case when the president is the one that's entrusted with the Constitution to make the determination of the nominee and also to be involved in the confirmation by the advice and consent of the Senate, which is just a locate where his power come from to do that. That's what they're doing there. He doesn't say provided that they give to a majority of their vote. That's made up. It doesn't say that in the Constitution. With the advice and consent, he is going to inform them of who his nominees are and justifying that to them. They're going down that hill is a cancellation of the document in what's required in Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. I'm saying that. There's no scholar going to say anything different. If they're going to say it different, bring it out here to the public. Okay. I'm sorry that Carter lost his life. He lived a full life, 100 years old. But we have bigger fish to fry than that. And that is the presidency itself is under attack in this country at this point. We got to reclaim our institutions as intended by the framers. And I keep saying this over and over again. Let's get back to the framers. Without that, we're lost as a nation. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.